There are now alternatives in the money world, and that is that you will have the CBDCs on one end, and you will have Bitcoin on the other hand. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the vast differences between the two, and who knows, you may find out something you didn't know before. To get started, we have to establish some key comparisons, and the first comparison is obviously the issuance of these currencies. On the one hand, you have Bitcoin, which has no single authority like a state, a government, or even a central bank. It's controlled by its algorithm, by its math, and by its issuance schedule. And on the other hand, you have the CBDCs, which are completely controlled by the central banks. CBDCs stand for central bank digital currencies. And in fact, what they will do is that they will centralize the monetary policy and the monetary expansion of all of these currencies. We already saw some experiments, and now with the announcement by ECB chief Christine Lagarde, we even see a rollout in November, as you can see in this clip.
And we started working on the digital euro way back. Actually, when I started my term 5.5 years ago, and hopefully campaigning enough with all the stakeholders, meaning European Parliament, meaning European Council, meaning European Commission, so that we can eventually, not put to bed, but put to reality this digital euro. The deadline for us is going to be October of 25, and we are getting ready for that deadline, but we will not be able to move unless the other parties, the stakeholders, as I call them, Commission, Council, and Parliament, actually complete the legislative process, without which we will not be able to move. And I think it is critically important, and it seems to the agnostic or the skeptics, it seems to be more relevant and more of an imperative now than ever before, both on the wholesale and on the retail level, both.
In it, she vastly explains that from October on, the CBDCs will be rolled out, and there will be an implementation phase where banks especially have to get on board. And that is a key thing, because there is also some criticism from the financial world, especially with commercial banks who have different branches. Maybe some where you could just have your account and a savings bucket, an investment arm, a wealth management arm, and other key investment arms such as real estate and development as well. If you now centralize everything, you basically limit the chances of them getting involved. Why is that? Well, see, the current financial system with the central banks issuing money and controlling the money expansion has different categories. We call them M1, M2, M3, and even M4. These vast categories have differences between the way money gets actually to retail. Retail often only sees the money expansion from M3 and M4 onwards. M2 is more of the money expansion internally, and M1 is obviously what the central banks are doing or how they will affect the change depending on if they raise or lower interest rates. Now, with that leverage in between these different categories, banks actually have opportunities for different strategies. They can get money on the cheap if the interest rates are, for example, low. They can build new products and sell them. Or if the interest is high, they can have other hedging mechanisms to counterbalance this. If you now have everything with the instance of the central bank in the middle, a lot of that leverage gets lost in between, and banks would be way more centralized and dependent on the ECB or other central banks, for example. This would mean that they would obviously need to work more closely, which is the main argument for the CBDCs by the central banks. However, it has led to some criticism and even some speculation if the implementation of such currencies is possible with banks. And that is a key difference, because a lot of privacy experts are concerned that this vast centralization of CBDCs could potentially lead to more surveillance in the financial system, because on the one hand, there is still the argument that you can use cash, but if everything moves to digital, you lose that leverage and that privacy that citizens and people in everyday life situations have. And also, this is a key difference between Bitcoin and CBDCs. With Bitcoin, you have the opportunity to hold your own assets, so you don't have to rely on that third entity or that single entity at this point. And with CBDCs, you would lose that. On the other hand, they can implement the CBDCs, of course. It would make payments and infrastructure more simple, But looking at the past experiences and case studies with, for example, the CBDC in Nigeria, you saw a lack of interest by retail and essentially banks to actually implement them. And thinking of a society that now still has the option for cash to move everything to digital in such a short period of time is a big challenge. Lastly, the most important point, in my opinion, is that with the CBDCs, you modernize the financial system. However, you still leave it open to certain flaws. What if they print money too quickly? What if they cannot control the entire supply? With Bitcoin, all of that is thrown out of the window because you have that hard cap of 21 million coins. Whether the CBDCs will actually be successful in finding that adoption and also the whole implementation remains to be seen. Maybe it will be a system that's more closely connected with banks and central banks, and there will still be other alternatives for retail customers. Or maybe we will now get into a phase where these CBDCs roll out, see some pushback, and depending on what the pushback is, have to adapt. But what do you think? Are the CBDCs a more modern version of money, the way we use it these days, and are they improving things? Or is Bitcoin a great alternative for that, which is what it is stated in various reports by ECB chiefs and ECB workers? So we will need to wait and find out whether retail customers and banks are going in one or the other direction. If you have thoughts or comments, please leave them below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.